Hello everyone, it's Josh, Z50 Minis, Orlando, Florida. We're going to revisit this is going to be a tutorial on how to do the leak down test on these small single cylinder displacement engines. Again, the previous video I made discussed the difference, or my opinion, of using the leak down versus the compression tester on the single piston small cylinder engines. And I favor the compression or the leak down test due to, I think there's errors with the gauge and the tube and the displacement of these engines. I might do it just to have some fun. Problem was, if you need to eliminate, I think you need to eliminate this length of hose here. You got your check valve here. If you can just eliminate this hose, get your adapters and run it to the spark plug adapter, which is easy to access on these engines. You can just put the gauge directly into the spark plug port and eliminate this hose, and I think you're going to get a better reading, more accurate reading. So I'll try that out. I'll see what it is. So what you'll need right off the bat is your choice of leak down gauge. I use the Lang CLT-2. You'll need a compressor to fill up the cylinder. 100. It has to be able to get to 100 to 150 psi. At least for these off-the-shelf manufactured gauges. I know some people make some homemade ones that can handle lower pressure, but these call for 100 to 150 psi. You'll need an adapter for most likely with your kit. For our spark plugs are 10 millimeters on these Honda cylinder heads across the board. Z50, ATC70, XL70s, CT70s. So get your. This is made by Lyle. You can get it on Amazon. 10 millimeter size threading here. So we'll focus on this bike for the leak down test example. I don't want to pull the stop in unless I have to. He's ready to step it up to an 88 with possible CT70 or Z50 head on it, based kind of on that last build I did for the yellow hardtail. First step to get ready for the leak down is we're going to pull our side covers on our engines here, and we're going to find top dead center on the compression stroke, because we want the piston as near the combustion chamber as possible, and then at the top dead center combustion stroke, the valves, intake and exhaust, are both closed. Next, get your access cap on your, this is the intake side for your valve. Intake valve is under here. Get this off, 17 millimeter socket or open wrench. Okay, and then once we have that viewable, we're going to keep our eye on this and rotate our flywheel counterclockwise, and we're going to look for this rocker arm to drop, which means it's on the cam lobe and it's starting to push the valve open. And then once it comes back up, we are very close to top dead center on the compression stroke, and then we just want to rotate this a little bit more till you get to the T mark on the flywheel and this mark on the case. So let's do that process, and I'll give you a visual. So it's already starting to go down. Valve is opening. Now it's going to come back up where we want it to seal, and at that point we are going to rotate this flywheel until we get that T mark at top dead center, and it matches with the case. And at this point you should have a little play in your valves, so you know. So mechanically the valve or the cam rockers are off the lobe on the cam, so you don't need to worry about pulling this, because both intake and exhaust cams are both closed at this point in combustion. So that's how you want it. We're set in the right spot to start our leak down test. Next up, get your spark plug pulled out, because that's where that tool, the leak down test tool, needs to go into. Alright, get your lead hose for your gauge in place. You want to make sure this is tight, O-rings seated right so you don't have any leaking here. And then I'm gonna feed it over to my other side here. Alright, so each tool is going to have their own instructions. If you go with the Lang, I'm showing you how to use the Lang tool. You're going to have your pressure adjustment here, regulator. They tell you to, before you connect your air hose under pressure from your air tank, they want you to turn this counterclockwise and relieve it of pressure. Connect your tool, and then you're going to have to set this dial by turning this clockwise. You're going to want this gauge to come all the way down and sweep to your zero neutral spot. So we're going to release this, and I'm going to turn it, and you'll see it start to sweep. So I'm going to get this set to 0 and then lock it down. Alright, so I got myself set at 0, and this gauge here reads your PSI that's coming in through the regulator. I have 150 PSI on my tank, so it's going to sweep past the 100 mark, but this is all locked down. And next step is going to be, let's grab a breaker bar. I'm going to grab a breaker bar and a 17mm socket to hook on this flywheel, because once we get to the next step, after stabilizing the flywheel with the breaker bar, we're going to connect our lead hose to our gauge, and then it's going to pressurize the cylinder, and under pressure on these small engines, it's going to push that piston and get it out of the top dead center mark. So we want to use that breaker bar and hold it in place so it doesn't spin on us. Alright, so with your foot on the breaker bar holding the flywheel in place, I connected my hose under pressure that's hooked in the spark plug port or hole, and I am getting almost about 30% leak down on this engine. So we got some leaking going on, and we'll just kind of walk around and I'll show you where you check to pinpoint where possible leaks are coming from. So aside from the gauge information, this is where this tool is pretty cool. You can listen to where pressure is escaping out of the cylinder. So one place you check here, pull your dipstick out, picking up that noise. You can hear that there's going to be some leaking, but this is a little bit loud leaking coming out of this crankcase area. So what that's telling me is air is leaking past the rings on the piston and working their way down then to the crankcase. So I can hear that. The other area you listen to, if you have leaking on the exhaust valve, you can come over here and follow your exhaust pipe and put your ear up to that. I don't hear anything coming out of my exhaust pipe, so I'm assuming the exhaust is sealing well. The other area is your intake valve, and I do get air coming out of this top area where the intake valve is, and I hear air coming out of my intake manifold. So I know that there's some leaking getting past my intake valve. It's not sealing well. The other thing is, if you had leaks where gaskets are, you would potentially hear some leaks there with your mating of your cylinder head to your jug or your jug to your case. So just also make sure you don't hear any leaking coming out of the spark plug area, which I don't. That would be a erroneous leak, which is a false reading. Just one other note about while you're doing the leak down test and you're getting leakage out of the intake valve or exhaust valve, it could be some carbon buildup it's keeping the valve from seating properly. So if you can fit a small piece of wood in there on top of your tappet and gently give it some taps with a hammer while under the the pressure of the leak down test, you might be able to knock that carbon loose, and then it would reseat itself. I guess you could possibly, if you can't fit that in there, is gently give it a few taps with a brass hammer. But you don't want to hit it too hard. It's just a kind of a gentle process to see if it can knock out the carbon buildup under the pressure and then reseat itself. So that might be a pretty simple fix without having to pull the cylinder head off and repair it. It might just repair itself if you can knock some of that carbon out, and then it gives it a chance to possibly fire over and clean itself off, especially if an engine's been sitting for a while. Alright, so that's going to wrap up how to use the leak down test tool. I guess I'm not telling you not to use your compression gauge. I get information out there that people are happy with their gauges. I get other information that people believe they're getting misreadings. Check valve location on the hose, modifying all this stuff, getting different readings. There's a lot of stuff out there of what people are doing on these gauges for small engines. If you're a small engine mechanic and you've had success with compression gauges and feel that your setup is reliable, if you don't mind, share it down in the comments. Let me know what gauge you're using. I'm open to it. But at least this is not a Harbor Freight special gauge that I use. It's kind of a middle ground. I had a lot of reviews before I bought it. I did a little research. I didn't want to buy obviously the cheap stuff, and I wasn't buying a Snap-on. But anyways, so if you got some good info, let us know. Share it. I appreciate it, man. Again, if you like what I'm doing, subscribe, and I've got plenty of more videos to bring out as I work through these project bikes that I have.